Hi there, everybody. Dhaman Mehta here, and thank you for once again joining me on my journey as I go through my favorites list on fanfiction.net. I know it's been a while. I know, sorry, just shit happens. But let's go into these stories. So these are again stories that are found on the website fanfiction.net that are on my favorites list, and I'm rereading them to see if they still deserve to stay on my list or not. They've been sorted by publication date, so I'm still going through my list of like 1,200 plus stories. I am over halfway, but I think honestly I'm going to be doing this for at least another year or so. So let's dive in, starting with Shirou Emiya, Erogame Protagonist by Gabriel Blessing. And so this is from the writer of In Flight, which is a very, very well-known fanfic in the Fate Stay Night fanfic community, I guess. Also the secondary community, but this author's really well-known, maybe not universally well-liked, but well-known. And this story is actually a spin-off of In Flight, where during the middle of it, basically, I guess the author got bored of writing that or was taking a while, so he actually wrote this as a spin-off. And as a manifestation of that, Zeltrek shows up and actually sends the Shiro into another Erogame world where he has to face the dreaded perils of life in Monster Girl Quest. And even though it's only 4 chapters, it goes through and really it's only 2 chapters, but it goes through the entire game, and it's filled with a whole bunch of like meta humor and many repeating gags that are sure to make you laugh. And the author is constantly poking fun at the tropes of both visual novels and video game mechanics, and especially in like when they come together or are like, you know, superfluous in some areas. It works really well in my opinion, because it understands that it's a comedy first and foremost, so it doesn't force the reader to go waste their time on tons and tons of backstory or world building when that's not the focus of the story. That's not the point of it. Like, there is world building, apparently, like even just tangentially from listening to the story and the comments that he makes, I found that, like, yeah, Monster Girl Quest does have a lot of lore and there's a lot of stuff that's there, but that's not the point of the story, and I don't really care. So why bog this down with, you know, pages of backstory when I just want to get to the next gag? You know, it's just super funny and entertaining because it focuses on the humor as well as the relationship that is being built via the humor. I just really, really enjoy it, and it has one of the best jokes is just it's Shiro getting a revelation that I think would actually improve his life that I don't see very often, and I just love that so much. I feel like this is a must read for anybody who likes Fate Stay Night or Erogames and comedy, and it's gonna stay on my list. Alright, next is Lies My Partner Told Me by Mr. Chaos. So this is a Avengers crossover with the show Castle. There might be I can just say right away that there's probably going to be more Avengers things of this, because, like, you know, these stories came out in 2012, so this is basically just when the first Avengers movie came out. So, and I also got into, so me going back to the Marvel stuff, I saw a bunch of stories that were based on the Avengers or like in that, so you might start seeing more of those on this list. But this takes basically Richard Castle, turns out it's not his first name, and he's actually Ant-Man, and he ends up fighting in the Battle of New York at the end of Avengers. It's really, really short. Basically just Castle wakes up in the morning and gets a visit from Fury, and then about 5 minutes later, and then like he goes to tell his family about him being Ant-Man, and then like 5 minutes later, Loki attacks New York, and so they're just doing all the fighting and stuff. There's a little bit of drama sprinkled in here and there, but the time frame of the events means that there's just no time for anything to sink in, and there's, you know, a lot of kind of loose threads that they're not solved here. There is a sequel, and like it wasn't completed, but like I think, but there are certain things that get more time. But it does feel weird that like the Hank, like Ant-Man, and like gets kind of chummy with the Avengers really like quickly, even though they basically just meet during the events of the battle. And it's a little odd, and there's just a lot little things that move too fast in my opinion. But but in the end, like it's really just a quick read. That's really just one big scene that doesn't really stay with you after you read it. So it's not going to stay on my list. Number 3 is a story that's not on fanfiction.net anymore. I do have a link to a Wayback Machine link for when it was, so I was still able to read it and I can review it. Then this one is called The Mind Can Make a Heaven of Hell by TardisIsTheOnlyWayToTravel. And basically this is a Sherlock story where it turns out Sherlock is actually Lucifer, who just got really bored of ruling hell and decided to take a run at being human for a bit. And it's basically just a bit of character, like a character piece, as we see Sherlock trying his hand at humanity while being watched over by Michael, his insufferable brother, and palling around with Watson. It's just a bit of just character as he's like just figuring out and like dealing with being human. I found it to be fine, fun enough to give it a look, but it's already off the website, so I can't. It's off my list. All right, now we have Naruto, Prince of the Underworld, Breaking the Titan's Curse by Flames of Asher. This is the second sequel to the Naruto Prince of the Underworld series, which was on my list. The first 2 stories we've talked about in previous videos, and I've removed both of them. Here, once again, there is an improvement in the writing quality based to the previous stories, but the actual story itself is pretty much unchanged from canon of the third Percy Jackson book. Granted, there's a few bits that get butterflied away, but nothing really made me care about this story as opposed to any other, though that may be because, again, I don't have that much. I'm not invested because it's been so long, and also I didn't enjoy the first 2 parts of this version. I think it's an okay version of the third Percy Jackson book, and if you like the previous entries, you'll like this, especially as you'll get better quality writing. But I just did not enjoy this and the lack of change, and it's not going to stay on my list. Okay. Now we come to Infinite Swords by Dagunth. And this is a Fate Stay Night crossover with Infinite Stratos, an anime which I've never seen, and I really don't know much about. I just know it's basically about power armor or something, I think. And the base anime was basically it's a standard harem anime thing where only women can use power armor, and then our one protagonist shows up and accidentally activates one and gets put into the world. Same thing here, except Shiro replaces the original protagonist, and it's really the same thing where it's this world is a thing where both these things just existed and they just didn't interact with each other, so they take place in the same world. It's fair, and the result is pretty standard fare for an incomplete story where it doesn't get too far into its plot, and so we just get a little bit of cool ideas hinted at that never actually go bloom into fruition. There is one fun bit where because this story is completely told through Shiro's perspective, we get an insight into how dense a harem protagonist can be and how they interpret the actions of the various women around him. That provides a lot of comedy, a bit of comedy, but it's not enough to keep it on my list by itself. And sadly, the rest of the story, while having some interesting plot points with the Mages Association and other maguses, it doesn't develop a lot enough to be super interesting to reread again and again. So while I did have I did have a bit of fun with Shiro rationalizing away the actions of the many women that love him, it's not going to stay on my list. Okay, so next is Shortcuts in Learning by Drakensys, and this is a super short one-shot of a Harry Potter story that it says is a crossover with Ranma, but it's not really. Basically, it's just Harry wants to get some training, like, to fight Voldemort, and so Moody's like, fuck it, yeah, we'll train him in a way that's so dumb he'll beg to quit, and they take a page out of Genma's handbook and train him in the ways of the Sao Tome clan. It really pokes fun at the ridiculousness of the training regimen, and how stupid and barmy like Dumbledore just acts and everything. Like, it's just short little bit of like fun that I would happily revisit, and it's gonna stay on my list. And finally, last but not least for this video, is Ripples in Time by Shiva Vixen. And it's more Final Fantasy VII time travel, but with a huge-ass budget, in the sense of, and instead of sending just one or two people back in time, why not send your whole crew? Make sure everything gets fixed, This is them getting sent back in time with the whole cast of all, like, I want to say it's the 9 main characters, and then as well as a couple extras thrown in as well. So they got like a double-digit number of time travelers going in to make sure everything's fixed. And the story jumps around between each of the characters because they get sent back to where they were, and they weren't all conveniently together. So they don't get sent back to the start of the game. They get sent back to way before the actual events of FF7. So there's time to fix everything before everything would actually go to shit. I enjoy this a lot. The camaraderie between the characters, because it's all post-canon and stuff, is really, really cool. You can just see how caring they are and how they understand each other. And, you help each other while still having to get over shadows of the past that have now been brought back to light because they're in said past. It also actually highlighted just how many characters and plot lines are actually in FF7 that I've forgotten, just because of how, like, it's actually been a while since I've played the original game, and even longer since I've played Dirge of Cerberus or Crisis Core. So, like, there's actually so many names in here that I forget how many people are actually characterized with names and not just faceless mooks that are just there to move the plot, and how many storylines are actually there. But it's cool because this all gets wrapped up. Everything's nice and done. It's complete, so bonus points for that. But I fully enjoy the story where we see characters who are flawed but not broken, working through their struggles, and you don't see that in most time travel fics here, because most time travel fics are just, they get there, fix this shit up, or just wallow in sorrow and stuff like that. But here, it's like semi-competent people who are over their shit, getting a little bit thrown in, but still working towards it in a good way. And also just the huge cast working together is also something that's pretty novel. I enjoy this a lot, and if you like Final Fantasy VII or time travel fics, I think you should give this a look, and it's going to stay on my list. And there we have it. Another 7 stories from my list. Status time from my total list. I have now read 717 stories. Oh my god. And 348 of them have stayed on my list. So still under half. Like, I'm cutting a lot. Like, it's interesting. Like, I feel like I don't think I'm gonna get back over that 50% mark. I think I'm gonna still keep cutting more and more as time goes on. But I'm glad to see all these. If you're interested in any of these, links are in the description, as well as a link to the playlist. So if you want to see these stories from the beginning, or if you want to see all of these in like a written format instead, I have a link to a forum where I also post this on Sufficient Velocity, as well as a link to my fanfiction.net profile if you want to check out what other stories are going to be coming up on my list for favorites. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care.